Hi, everyone. Welcome any newcomers. This is episode 2 of the Gemini cycle for AstroSoup, to get all those words in there. So, where to start? Well, it suddenly occurred to me that sometimes when I'm listening to another astrologer speak about something that interests me, what always pops into my head is a story, a story about myself, memory about myself, because I think that's really where so much where we get connected to astrology right from the beginning. I remember when I was first taking classes with Chris McCrae, and I don't remember exactly what it was. I remember what my response was because I have Sun and Jupiter and the Moon seventh house and Pluto on my ascendant. And I don't know what it was she said, but I suddenly understood what I consider to be two different sides of my personality, which is I really like people until I don't. It's not quite as simple as that, but that memory has stuck with me forever and ever and ever, and is one of the first moments that I really understood how astrology functioned and why it resonated for me so deeply. So, what I want to talk about right now, and while I'm talking, see what memory pops up for you. It doesn't have to have anything to do with what I'm talking about, just a memory that your emotional or your intellectual body suddenly connects to. Because it's those memories that tell us a lot about who we are, that reveal who we are, because we have many experiences in life and we don't remember them all. So often, one of the ones that always pops up for me is my decision to become a reporter, otherwise these days known as a journalist. And I was in my second year of university, and I had once again, in true seven planets in Aries style, changed majors and minors. So the first year I majored in psychology and minored in history. And my second year I majored in French and minored in English, because I really wanted to major in French to start out with, because I thought I wanted to be a translator. So, anyways, by the time we got to the end of my second year, because I got mono that year, French was kind of out the window, and I realized that I didn't really want to be speaking other people's words. Just and granted, I'm 19, 20 at this time, and suddenly it just popped into my head. I think I'd like to be a reporter, and so I kind of set the course there, and I went home and I was talking to my mother and I said, yeah, I think I want to be a reporter, and she said, why? And I said, I don't know, seems like a good idea to me. So when I think back about that memory, it shows me how clearly that as much as I have a lot going on in my logical mind, I'm very much guided by my intuition, by my gut feeling. And so as I'm talking again, see what memories surface for you, because our memories do reveal a lot about who we are, about what we find important, about what my guide is, what it can be, even it can be any kind of memory, because they always tell us something about who we are. And sometimes we forget to honor our memories in that way and see how much it is they might reveal about us to ourselves. Because really our job is to be ourselves. No matter which filters, like looking at chart or whatever, or palmistry or whatever, no matter what the symbols show us, we still have something of a choice as to how we're going to do that. And the memories that we have can reveal how we've handled those choices. Because I'm fond of saying that there's no such thing as a mistake, just a choice that has consequences you hadn't planned on. And it's how we navigate those things. And sometimes our memories are directly connected to how we've navigated things or how we found out what we were being called to do. So, anyways, now that I've shared that with you, I set a task for both my producer Andy and Frank Clifford, who is going to spend some time talking to us about how to read all those fun lines on your palms. I asked them if they had a memory that they would like to share. So I'm going to make Andy go first.
Okay, well, there's a lot to remember, but I thought I could talk about the first time I met you and the memory of that because this is your show. And it's just been interesting to watch you grow. I mean, look how many people are in the room today, Leslie. Like this things are really cooking. When I first met you, I remember meeting you at NORWAC, the Northwest Astrological Conference, and you were the quirkiest, nicest, sweetest, smartest woman that I met. And I just remember your nails were just on the fleek. I don't know if that's how the kids say that or whatever, but yeah, you had your nails and so yeah, we had an instant connection. I don't, but we've gone so far since that time. But that memory of a first meeting, I think it was right in the lobby by all the shops. Or maybe it was, I don't know. But yeah, I distinctly remember our first meeting. And so just such a cool thing that we've been working together all this time now. So
Well, I remember you too.
you're still smart and quirky.
Well, like does attract like because you're pretty smart and quirky yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I can't really insult my producer. I could be in trouble.
You can. You can.
Well, I don't have one. Why did you do that? Now you backed me into a corner.
If you wanted to do professional wrestling, I would produce that too. Depends on the transit, Leslie. Be nice to me per the transit.
I don't think there's a single moment in my entire life where I've ever wanted to be a professional wrestler, but whatever.
All
Okay,
right.
well, now it's your turn, Frank.
Well, I don't remember the first time I met you, Leslie, I'm afraid. I don't remember that. Probably at NORWAC. I don't quite remember, but I do remember something that changed the course of my life, and that was a visit to a hand reader in London, in Belsize Park, which is North London. And uh, my dad had gone to see a hand reader a year before, and it amazed all of us because he just really wasn't the type to go and see a palmist. And he came back with the cassette recording and shared it with us, and we were very impressed and very surprised. And then I went to see her, and then I went to see another hand reader, my mum went to see, and sat with her, and she predicted something for me that was really horrendous. She inadvertently well, it was sort of on the it wasn't a direct prediction, but she implied that I would be married in a few years. I was 17, maybe 16 at the time, and that my partner would die from my hand. And I thought, my goodness, what a what a thing to tell somebody. And so I left there thinking, there's got to be a better way of doing this, and I'm going to learn this bastard subject and prove her wrong, and find out what it was in the hand that that she'd seen and what marking it was. And of course, it didn't happen, but it did made me very conscious, very wary of um, falling in love around that age, which of course is a precarious time to fall in love anyway. And yeah, I was very conscious of that, but at the same time, it made me defiant. I thought, this has got to be done better than this. So I went out and learned the subject and read hands and did as much as I could. I was already learning astrology, but I that was a deep memory being told that and then thinking, no, no, it's got to be done better, and I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, when anybody who practices a divinatory art says something like that, that yeah, just always makes me clench. How could you in all conscience say that to someone?
Well,
Yikes.
I know. I think I mean we've all said too much, too little sometimes, and we learn when we see clients, we learn what to say, how to say it. We learn to to know who we're speaking to and how they will digest it. That's one of the key things that we learn as astrologers or hand readers, hopefully card readers as well. But yes, it's not something that I would encourage anybody to talk about. I think yeah, I would say never talk about health unless you're qualified to do so, and that includes making these wild predictions. But as we know, astrology and other subjects, it's um, we're given a lot of power, if you want to call it that. We're elevated by our clients sometimes, thinking that we are the guru, the people that can see the future. And we have to be very careful to hand that back and not get wrapped up in the ego that may come with it. And we've all got egos, but the idea that yeah, somebody will come to us and we would be right, we would be predicting their future. And I'm with Brian Clark, the Canadian Australian astrologer, who always says, if you're anticipating a transit or the future, you're not participating in it. And I'm a big fan
I
of trying to,
like that.
yeah,
And
I,
I totally agree. Well,
yeah,
someone once said to me, what do you do if your clients don't do what you tell them to do? I said, well, first of all, I'm not telling them to do anything. The power for their life resides in their hands. My job is merely to give them and help them understand themselves better. And exactly, if you're looking at what's happening now, it to me, my job, and I think you feel the same way, is to give the people the tools or the understanding so they're in charge of their own lives. I really don't, I would say, I don't have time to be in charge of anybody else's life because I'm trying to figure out what to do with my own. So, right?
yeah, it's
But,
it's
well,
it's so important. Yeah, yeah.
well, thanks for sharing that memory because um, it made me, I was trying desperately to think of a time when someone said something as stupid
我
as
们
that.
后面没有那个什么哈，没有那个语录哈，
There we go.
Whoever you are, could
没
you
有，
turn
我
on
那个
your,
导用完，
could you
Leslie,
没
turn,
有就没有了，那改天去改。
you'll need to
然后
mute.
还有那个，
Yeah, I'll do it.
I don't,
然后还有
I
那
can't
个
do
叫
it. I'm
什么
gonna
嘞？那
go
个
host.
蚝油，
So
蚝
go
油
to
是可以
the,
用的吗？
the three dots at the top right.
啊，还是自己买？
There we
thank you,
go.
Andrea. That's
Yeah.
why you're my producer.
That was bound to happen.
A
Yes.
brief interlude of another language. I don't know what else to say. Okay, so now we're going to move on. I'm just going to do a quick summary of what's coming up in this episode of. We're going to be doing in what's in the bowl. I'm going to just talk about the full moon and the new moon, and then Frank and I are going to talk and explore palmistry, and then I've got an oracle card for each sun sign, to handle all of the how shall I put it? The roller coaster energy that we're going to be dealing. That doesn't even really describe it because even a roller coaster has some structure. I'm not sure that all of the air and fire we're dealing with is going to have a lot of structure. It's going to be a lot of zigzag. See, again, I'm trying to find a structure. Anyways, never mind. So just a reminder that the doing only 2 episodes a cycle now. So the first Cancer episode will be on June 22nd and the second on July the 6th, and both will be at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Stay tuned to my Facebook page because I will put in all the time zones there. I just didn't want to take time to explain them all now. So let's just move on to what's in the bowl. So we're going to be talking about so of course the full moon and during the Gemini cycle comes before the new moon. And so of course that means we're going to have our yearly full moon in Sagittarius. So this is always a time when we're being asked to take knowledge and turn it into wisdom, to apply it, to act on knowledge, because of course Gemini can spend a lot of time accumulating information, and because there isn't a piece of information that it doesn't find interesting for at least 10 seconds. So when the full moon is in Sagittarius, the call is to, so how do you practice? How do you take what you have and exhibit it or express it in an outward form that has some effect on your outer environment and not just on whether you're managing to entertain yourself each and every day? As in the I said in the last episode that Gemini is the storyteller, the town crier. We really need that Gemini energy because of its curiosity. And however, Gemini can get caught up in following every little sparkly object that it sees just because it's something new. So knowledge or information has to become knowledge and then perhaps become wisdom. So that's what that full moon in Sagittarius every year asks us to do. And this year, there's when it happens, some of the really intense fire air energy that we're dealing with at the beginning of the Gemini cycle starts to calm down as Mercury moves into Cancer shortly afterwards, and then Venus moves into Leo. So our level of sensitivity will start to shift once that full moon passes. And of course, as we know, the full moon is always an opportunity to see very clearly exactly where we're going, where we've been, and where we're going. It allows us to see what it is we've managed to create during that cycle of the moon, and then figure out, what's worth keeping, which is part of the disseminating cycle, so that when we get to the last quarter, we can release it and start to let it go. Move into the balsamic, where we get to start having creating space for whatever new is going to show up, because creativity and inspiration are not tangible things. They arrive from what I call the world of all possibilities. And so we have to have space for all of that, which is really how I see the balsamic moon. So, of course, this is going to lead us to that new moon in Gemini. So that new moon in Gemini, it will challenge us. So, where do you think your curiosity is going to take you so you can grow? Not just so you can accumulate facts or even knowledge, but what role is that going to play in your life? Because now that Uranus is in Gemini, our curiosity is going to be on hyperdrive. It means a lot of, and especially in the early stages, a lot of communication that is, how shall I put it, not well thought out, because the Gemini Aries energy together can bring about a lot of saying whatever pops up in your consciousness without giving it any thought. So that new moon will encapsulate that, but because it's in later degrees, there's an opportunity to really take that knowledge and begin to build something new in terms of where you might grow or where you might expand. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that, at least. And if, and those are just jumping off points. My purpose in doing these things is just to give you a place to begin, and so you can follow the thread in a way that works for you. Because everybody has Gemini in their chart in a different place, and for any people who are not astrologers that might be here, just remember to notice as we hit that new moon, where is your curiosity taking you? What suddenly is sparking your mental faculties and making you excited? Because that's one thing about Gemini, it really is enthusiastic. So now we're going to move on and talk to Frank about palmistry. I personally have studied palmistry, but it's not a language that 100% spoke to me. I used to work in a tea room, and we were required to read cards. And I couldn't read tarot unless I was reading tarot for somebody who read tarot. So I created my own deck of astrology cards that I could work with. I I knew enough palmistry that I could fake it a little bit and then just rely on my intuition, which is why I'm interested in talking to Frank about this, because it's always something that's fascinated me and still I'm curious about, but it's not the language that speaks to me the way astrology does. And I also had to read teacups, which is an art in of itself. And I can't say that I even came close to being, yeah, yeah, I looked at teacups and looked for something. Sometimes something showed up and sometimes I couldn't see whatever a really good teacup reader could see, which is a very long way of saying I wasn't very good at it. I'm so Andy, can you how do I move Frank up so he's next to me?
I don't think you have multi-pin, or maybe you do, but you would go up to the top three dots and pin him and pin
Oh, okay.
yourself.
You think I would remember these things? Oh, I want to make him okay, I want to make him co-host because he's going to show us something, right, Frank?
That's right.
And then now we're just going to try to figure out. Can we unpin you, Andy? I can't.
Yeah, I don't think I can unpin myself. Let me see.
Well, I tried, but it just.
I'm not pinned, so I'm gonna go off camera anyway. So
One of these days I will. Well, you know what? I'm going to move off Zoom at some point. This seemed to work before, and I don't understand why we can't. I'm.
Well, I'm happy to share my screen and maybe we'll be in
Okay.
the top
And
right
then,
hand
and
corner.
then we want to thank you for being proactive, Frank.
That's good. Okay. Yes,
Okay,
good.
so Frank Clifford.
Well, yeah.
I just want, should I introduce you? Or does everybody know who you are?
I seem to recognize a lot of names in the list today, so it's great to see different students and people who are connected. So thank you for being here, and thank you for inviting me. Yes, I love talking about hands. I think of them as it's a bit, I learned astrology, well, began learning astrology at 16, and then palms came along around 17 after I had that consultation, and I like to think of astrology being very deep and very rich in detail. And hands tend to be a lot more instant, of course. The horoscope doesn't change, hands change. Um, Over time, we obviously haven't got the same hands we have that we were born with, but we have the same horoscope that we have. So I like to think of the hands as giving us an overall guide, a picture of what we've created so far with our lives. The chart is always a map of potential. We can transit it, we can direct it, we can progress it, but it always remains that initial contract, if you want to see it like that. Um, with the hands, they're constantly growing to reflect who you are today, the decisions you've made, what's affected you, what is still with you. The loss of a loved one may not be predicted, but when it happens, it makes its mark on your hands. And the hands really are this remarkable testament to everything that we've carried emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically over the years. And so I like to think of it as the living hand. They'll always reflect where we are today. And of course, where we are today affects our future. Where we are today, how we see the world, like I'll never trust another person again, or every time I fall in love, I get betrayed. All the things that we conclude in our lives are part of who we are today, good and bad, the sabotaging bits and the inspiring bits. So, in a way, you can look at the hand and you can make predictions if you were inclined. I would be very careful these days about making any predictions about people's hands, except to inspire them to follow who they are, follow their dreams, work at what they want in their lives. But the so-called future in the hands, and you can time the hands, you can look at all sorts of ways of understanding where people are going, is very much based on where you are today. It's not written in stone. The lines change on the hand to reflect the changes that we make. So in that in that answer, Leslie, there's a whole load of avenues we could go down, but the hands are a living testament to the fact that when we change our lives, when we change our attitude, when we change our diet, the hands reflect that change too. So that inspires me. And this is why, after leaving that palmist and that prediction behind, my feeling was let's use this properly. Let's use this in a way to get people to think about where they want to be, what they want to use, what talents they want to employ, that sort of thing. Now, I mean,
I was just going to say that the person I learned palmistry from had very much the same approach you have.
great. And is it somebody that we know? Is it a local? Who was it?
Well, she was local here, and unfortunately, she's no longer on the planet.
Okay. Well, I think it really helps to have a positive, inspiring attitude rather than well, this is who you are, full stop. I think, the things that don't appear to change are the fingerprint patterns, the skin ridge patterns all across the hand. The most famous, of course, are the fingerprint patterns. For instance, let's have a look here. We've got, it's not showing up very well on here, but we've got all the different skin ridge patterns. This shows you how lines change over the years. Um, and but most people will be familiar and know a little bit about the major four lines, and not all of those are present. There originally it was three lines: the head, the heart, and the lifeline. I've always thought the fate line was a fourth line, and as astrologers, we're always looking for connections, aren't we, between subjects, and certainly these four lines represent the four elements that we have as well in our chart or in our psyche. So people understand or have at least heard about the four lines. The lifeline, which is the one that wraps around the ball of the thumb, is the one that people get most anxious about, of course. Uh, Short lifelines, short life? Not really, no. It's more about being grounded, being immersed, being connected to the family, the people around you, your history. Long lifelines, as we can see down here, that wrap around the thumb. They start at the top and go around the thumb, are associated with that connection, that rootedness in life. Short lifelines are not found on people who have short lives, and long lifelines are not necessarily found on people who have long lives. So that's a great misnomer. That's important to clear that up. People get very worried about it. The other thing as well is, of course, that lines overlap, lines stop, they break, they start again. And so the idea of looking at something and thinking it ends, as a seasoned hand reader, we know immediately that there's another line that's just started that actually replaces that. So people get very worried, and over the years I've spoken about palmistry all over the world, online, on the radio. Can you believe where people are fascinated and they can actually find things on the radio? I'm able to describe things without showing anybody anything. But people do worry about the lifeline. Um, One of the things that you could be doing in understanding the four major lines on your hand is to see which one appears to be the lightest, the faintest. That often is where we need to focus more energy. Lines are energy. It's one of the things that the books told me first, really. Lines are energy. And where there may be a delicate line, that needs energy, it needs focus, it needs training. Yeah? Often you find a lot of alternative health professionals with delicate lifelines, because who else is going to invest their time in health and helping other people with their health? It's certainly not the ones that are going to be running and sprinting and doing the athletic jobs around the world. Often a delicate lifeline suggests that diet, exercise, different energy needs to be put into that physical side of life. So we could look at the one that appears to be delicate in a way. The heart line is famous. It runs across. It's the first line that's a horizontal line that runs across underneath the palm, underneath the fingers here, really under the padded what we call the mounts here, which used to be very famous in the old palmistry books. I don't think people tend to look at those these days much. It's sort of more sort of fancy uh, footwork, perhaps. But the heart line is so much about how we welcome life, how we get involved emotionally with people. It's the line most associated with how we love, how we need to be loved. And often it's the most complex of all the lines. And very often it's the deepest of the lines, running under the fingers as it does. But its ending, its start, the breaks, all the different things along that line speak of our journey of love and through life as well. So, but again, even if the major lines don't tend to change over the months, the all the different markings around those or part of those lines can change. So if we see something, for example, the heart line is also associated with the heart and breathing, oxygen. It's literally about that whole part of the body that fuels the body. If we see something delicate on the heart line, then as doctors, I'm not a doctor, but as doctors, we might want to encourage people to focus on that part of the body. Anyway, the other horizontal line starts from where the thumb starts and the lifeline starts, and that's a headline. And that can be long, short, straight, diagonal, curved. This shows you how you process information, how you think about life, how you communicate, how you receive information on a mental level. The heart line, on the other hand, is more about the emotional aspects of how we digest emotions in life. But the headline is really the tools, the aptitudes we have, how we go to work, um, how we use our intelligence, our particular type of intelligence. So the headline is fascinating. A very straight headline, even if it's diagonal, but if it's in a straight line, usually very practical-minded people. People need to see proof before they believe anything. They want to go from A to Z or Z in a logical way. The curve of the line tends to want to see around corners, to just try things new, to just be a little bit more experimental in how they see things. So lots of a short headline, one that sort of ends under the ring finger here, a little bit shorter. People can be specialists. They can be rather abrupt. They want to get to the bottom line, get to give me the sum it up for me. People with a longer headline, one that extends towards the percussion outer side of the hand, they're the ones that could talk the legs off of the legs of a donkey, or the hind legs of a donkey is the phrase. And I'd be on buses or trains and hear people chat for an hour and think, oh my goodness, I've got a headache now listening to you. And I don't know them, but I'll have a quick look at their hand, and their headlines usually are very long. And that's about processing, chatting, talking, explaining, interest in many, many different things. Tell me about it, So the headline is very much about how we communicate. Finally, the fate line, I think in old palmistry books, it wasn't considered a major line uh, because it wasn't always there. But the fate line can start pretty much anywhere from the base of the hand here, where it starts here, to a little bit higher. It can be in 3 or 4 different branches, 3 or 4 strands. It can start later. It can break up. It's the perhaps most changeable or diverse of the lines. And the fate line is a lot about how we see ourselves in the world. The Vedic astrologers often call it the money line. The Vedic palmists call it the money line. But it really is about a sense of who am I at work? Who am I in the world? And I'll talk to you a little bit about left and right in a minute. But the fate line gives us an idea of where we're going, where we're heading, what we'll get out of bed in the morning for. And people with fate lines that start a little bit later sort of find their direction later in life. Ones that are quite strong and travel all the way up the hand towards the middle finger. Generally, they're people who know who they are, what they do well, and life is a steady climb or a steady build in some way. So those are the four lines, but the fate line is the most, I guess, varied of all the lines. But I hope people will find them both on the hand. The interesting thing, of course, and I'm aware that I'm just talking at you, Leslie. The interesting thing is that the left and the right hand are so different in some hands, in some people, you know, uh, and the left hand really does speak of the private self, who you are behind closed doors, what you've inherited, the things that resonate very deeply with you. So markings and shapes of the lines on the left hand are really the most personal, private self. You know, I often joke when I'm teaching this, if you don't want to be known, sit on your left hand when you're in a palmistry class. The right hand has a lot more to do with who we are on show, how we navigate the world around us, and what we use work-wise, socially, etc. But remember, we have love lines, so-called love lines, the heart line on both hands. So one of them is a lot more of an inner experience, and the other is perhaps on the right hand, um, Heartline says a lot about how we socialize, how we make friends, how we love with other people out there. But the left hand will say who we are on a very personal, private level. So that's one of the questions we get a lot. I don't tend to swap them if you are left-handed, which some palmists do. Some palmists will read what they call the left hander will be the active hand, and they'll swap the associations that I've got here. I'm not a fan of doing that. I just think left-handers are able to tap into the right side of their brain that is very imaginative, creative. It's able to think outside of the box. So if you're not a left-hander, but you want to do more of that right brain stuff, I would say do more with your left hand, literally around the house. Try writing with it. Do more and exercise that left hand more in order to get that right side of the brain working more. That imagination, the memory, the connections, that side. But I don't swap over the associations if somebody is left-handed. But left-handers are what do they say? 40%. Left-handers are sort of 10 to 12% of the population, depending on the country, depending on what used to be enforced on writers. But so it's about 10%, some places up to 15. But when you get into the top people of any profession, you've got about 40% of them are left-handers. Yeah. So you've got a very different quantity there. It's four times almost as many as you would expect. So they've got the advantage. Lefties have a great advantage, in spite of how you might feel like it's a very right-handed world. In a way, you could say maybe they've been blessed with seeing the world from a different angle. And if you can tap into that, you're on your way. Yeah.
So in other words, if um uh right-handed people are the normal people and left-handed people are the exceptional people, I'm that's not what you said. It's what I'm making a joke.
I hope everybody's exceptional in their own way. And I think
Oh,
the interesting thing about hands is that there are very ordinary things on our hands, but where something deviates from the norm, it's what makes us different. It's what makes us exceptional. So I always think that, if you've got a particularly long little finger or a large thumb, or you've got an unusual fork at the end of your headline, whatever it may be, it's the hand waving at you saying, look at this. This is what makes you different from other people. And our job as astrologers, as hand readers, is to get people to run with that very much. Yeah.
I really like the perspective that your left hand is your inner self, your more private self.
Yes.
Um, and because, when, I mean, this is what I was taught, when I took palmistry from the person I mentioned, Donna. She taught that this is what you came, left hand is what you came in with it, and the right hand was what you did with it, essentially, which is not the
Yeah,
same thing at all.
no, no. And I've always sort of moved away from that. The idea of this is what you're born with and this is what you make of it. And you hear that. And you're born with both hands. They both develop, they both move to reflect the changes on the inner, the personal, and the professional side. So they're always in, both of them are, if we're making progress, we're in development, so are our hands. Even if we're deteriorating, our hands are reflecting that as well, mentally, physically, whatever it may be. So I never see it as simply of that's what you're born with. Yes, it does talk about the family history, and the right hand does talk about the work, our public self, but they're both moving and growing, hopefully, and developing together, the inner and the outer together.
Well, looking at it that way allows for a little more breathing room, a little bit more sense of expansion. Um, I think to some degree we're still, on some wanting a divination art, whether it's palmistry or astrology, to tell us everything we need to know, and which is not living. That
Well, the ultimate, what you need to know is you need to know yourself.
yeah, I know, but
And the chart and the hands really give us the inside track on that. They give us an advantage. But I think we're
yeah,
bigger than both. I think we're bigger than our charts. There's an energy,
yeah.
there's a spirit that isn't seen in the horoscope, I don't think. And it's the same with the hands. There's it's almost like the spirit breathes life into the hands, into the
Well,
body, into the
that
chart.
that makes sense if you perceive it as the soul houses the body, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So that there's a part of us well, of course, I believe we're multi-frequency beings anyways, we just don't know it most of the time. And so then it means that you understand that these are tools which can guide you or help you or support you in whatever way, and rather than deterministic. And see, I always feel that that's very much connected to the outer planets. You know, their job is to take us outside the third dimensional consciousness. Um, we no longer, well, I shouldn't say that. There are parts of the world where Saturn is still very much in charge,
Sure, sure.
and
And
where the things that we in our part of the world um, are fortunate enough to be able to access, which is freedom of choice. And of course, we could debate what that really means because there's always some constraints, no matter how much we want 100% total freedom. Uh, but these kind of this is why I love to do this kind of stuff on my show, is because there are so many avenues and paths that people can pursue, in trying to know themselves, to be themselves, and I really appreciate being. I mean, I did it in my journalism career. I was always writing about things that nobody else would write about, like color and family, healing stuff, energy stuff. I wrote about crystals. I wrote about astrology. I interviewed people from my community for stories. Uh, so I've always not really wanted to be in that predetermined, that deterministic, not predetermined reality part.
yeah.
Not really. So
Well,
I
it's
appreciate.
safe and secure for some people. When you
Hmm.
hear astrologers say, oh, this is your fate, you can't do much about your chart, or you can only do what is suggested by the chart as well. Um, these are all things that Aquarians like yourself or Uranian beings like me, want to say, just watch me. let's do something different. Let's see it from a different angle. And if we're talking for the Gemini month ahead, then as you are today, uh, it's super important to give the other point of view. What you to be able to say that's interesting, that may work for you, but this may speak to you differently. And we know that astrology doesn't speak to everyone. There are people that just don't get it. They don't understand how it could possibly resonate, how there could be a connection with who you are, with what's out there. And it's the same with the hands. And I would say to anybody, find what it is that resonates, whether it's palmistry, iridology, astrology, uh, tea leaf reading, whatever it is. Um, use the tools to access a better way to live your life or a fuller way to live your life, or just confirmation that you are living your life well. And once you, I think most astrologers are evangelists in some way, aren't we? We want to pass on the good news. We want to encourage people to live their very best lives. That's what I'd like to think. I've met astrologers who aren't necessarily the most benign beings, and it's more about ego. But in reality, our job, our seeing clients is to inspire, to get people on the track that's for them, not our version of it, but their version of it. And
Be in service.
yeah, yeah, that's the key.
That's, yeah, I'll often say to clients, um, the session's for you. I'm not here to prove that I know what I'm doing, 'cause I know that I know what I'm doing. I'm here to support you growing into in whatever areas of your life you are currently on your agenda, because those things shift and change. We can't. I did a reading recently for someone, very interesting chart, a lot of mutability, and I told him right up front, I don't do predictive astrology. That's just not what I do. Um, and I did the reading for him, and then 2 weeks later, he reached out and asked me if I knew a predictive astrologer he could go to for a reading, and I was hard pressed to think of anybody, only because I mean I know they're out. I know they're out there. No, but I did find some people. I mean, I was happy to find somebody for him. This notion that, and in fact, I met someone yesterday who was interested in a reading, but she was afraid. I said, look, I'm not, you're actually in charge of this. I'm not in charge. It's unlikely that I'm going to tell you anything that you're not ready to hear, because partly I'm psychic. So I always want to make it clear to people, this isn't, I often say this, I'm not pulling this information out of my ass. We're having a conversation on another frequency. So any
Yeah.
information, whether it comes out of the chart or comes out of my intuition, it is present because there's a willingness on your part. I don't, and because there are lots of people who are afraid to investigate the kinds of things that we do, because they're afraid of just exactly what we were talking about, kind of experience that you had, where someone is going to tell you something that I don't know how you could know that anyway. Like, because from my perspective, whether we're talking palmistry, um, tarot, astrology, there are so many symbolic threads that could mean so many different things.
Yeah. I think people get more anxious about the hand because it's in the hand. It's very
Tangible,
interesting.
right?
Yeah, and it's you can't sort of scrub it away, or you can't just say, well, it's up there and it has no effect on me. And um, it's it's interesting just generally that when I teach a class of astrology, it can be 95% women, and when I teach palmistry, we get more men. It can
Interesting.
sometimes be 70-30 of women to men. And I often ask why, because I'm a Gemini rising, I'm curious about it. And they'll say, well, astrology sort of women's stuff. It's newspapers, it's up there in the sky. And I said, well, I do both. I mean, first of all, and I said, well, what about palmistry? Oh, it's real. It's your hand. It's something that it manifests. And it always very interesting to hear people's opinions of why they might see palmistry differently. But also, it does have that peer end predictive tell you how long you're going to live and tell you how many children you're going to have and all the things that as astrologers we train not to talk to people about and we know that the chart doesn't reveal any sort of reliable information on that. Um, so, but palmistry has this edge of the mystic, of the seer, of the guru, or the gypsy at the end of the pier in London, or South End, and that's problematic, and that's where people get very anxious about having their hand read.
Hmm.
That's why I start off with the idea that the lines change, and the lines change when we're changing. So if we want to change, we'll watch the lines alter and shift. Yeah. Are you-
Wow. No, it's no, it's just so interesting. I mean, it's lovely for me to refresh my memory because I was busy looking at my hands. Um, because I haven't done that for a long time. I just found that, well, it's almost like to me, this is a very intricate language as just as much as astrology is.
my feeling is it's easier to learn in a way, but with astrology you can go onto Astro Databank and look up 20,000 charts. Or you could get a program and try to search for some sort of connection. Show me everyone with Mars in Taurus in the 12th house, and you might get 50 people to study. That's wonderful. We can do that, and we can learn our craft from that. And I'm always saying to people, learn astrology with a chart in one hand and a biography in the other, or watching a biography on television, explore the chart. With the hand, it's going to take you many, many years to get close to seeing 20,000 palms. And so uh, there isn't that accessibility in that way. But the hand itself is actually easier because you're not having to think about Mars in Taurus in the 12th house. It's also square Saturn, but at the same time, it's opposite Uranus. All the things that can aggravate or get in the way of people of
Well, I,
students
I
getting.
think the irony of that is I found that easier in palmistry.
Yes, yes. Obviously, it speaks to you and in a different way, charts and information. For other people, it's hands. Both spoke to me, luckily. The woman that taught me said, when you learn palmistry, you'll just discard astrology. But I never did. I always found that astrology gave me more color, more information, and the palm gave me a great instant overview. I always liken it to the fact that um, being in reading a palm is a bit like being in a car. I always say, hopefully, we're in the driver's seat of our own car, steering, on the steering wheel, looking ahead, moving forward. But astrology is a bit like listening to the sounds and smelling the coffee as you go past the coffee shop, and seeing the chatter and the color of the trees, and you get the tremendous detail while you're driving. Palmistry is more like looking at the satellite navigator. It gives you the roads ahead, the blips, it gives you the terrain, it says this is a one way, and it gives you shortened information. Otherwise, if palmistry had as much information as astrology does in terms of all the detail that we can see, we'd have to have hands the size of grand pianos. We'd all be walking around with, with these impossible hands that just revealed far, every detail of our lives. So it's a condensed summary of what's most vital to us. The
Yeah.
chart, we can do thousands of things to it, and everything from midpoints to harmonics and everything
Oh
else
God,
along
my
the
head
way.
hurts.
I know, and but it gives us a color and a depth and a texture Then the palmistry gives us more of an instant, where are you now reading? Okay, this is what you've done with your life. And this is why you can look at the charts of twins and then look at their hands and they'll be very, very different.
Very
You don't,
different. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, we could talk about this forever, and all I have to say about the palm reader who told you were going to give up astrology was obviously she didn't know you very well.
well, again, it was a bit of a challenge, telling me that she was very Aquarian and rather very eccentric
Oh,
Aquarian. So changing her mind was never going to be on the cards or in the hand. But interesting lady, and I learned a lot from her. But and I was, I'm a Gemini ascendant. Of course, I'm going to be interested in hands, and of course, I'm going to be interested in two subjects and finding a way to bring them both through a consultation. Yeah.
we could keep talking about this forever, but I'm almost out of time, and I still have one segment to do. So I don't know.
Well, I'm going to stop my share so you can do that.
Well, thank
And
you so much, Frank. That was so interesting. I was looking at my palm and probably both of them are probably coming to some incorrect conclusions.
easy to.
So,
It's really easy to.
as I said at the beginning, so I used this deck of cards because for me, I kind of one of the ways I like to invite wisdom into my life is to use oracle cards. Because sometimes, as Frank was saying, you want not so much a quick fix, but you want something that's quickly going to guide you, and it's very helpful for people who aren't studying any of the divinatory arts, but still would like to invite wisdom into their lives. So I've used this deck before. It's actually English. It comes from England. The Tree Magic deck. I love it. So just to keep us all grounded during Gemini, during the Gemini neighbor, as we wander through the Gemini neighborhood, I just picked one for each sign, and I was going to show you the cards, but we don't have enough time, so I'm just going to tell you what. So for Aries, I picked the damson tree, which is rewards. For Taurus, I picked sweet chestnut tree, which is growth. For Gemini, so you can look up these trees and see if you get any other information from looking at them up. For Gemini, the mahogany tree, confidence. Cancer, the mulberry tree, insight. Leo, the magnolia tree, surprises. Try to hang on to your hat. Surprises can be a good thing. Virgo, peach tree, pleasure. Libra, date tree, a granted wish. So I'll make all the Libras happy. Scorpio, beech tree, vitality. Sagittarius, the hawthorn tree, transformation. Capricorn, mimosa tree, fulfillment. I'm having trouble with apps. Aquarius, the elm tree, faith. I nearly fainted when that one came up because I feel like I could use a bunch of that right now. And Pisces, walnut tree, resilience. And so, as always, I have a quote at the end of every episode. I call it Wrap It Up. And I think we're all going to like this one because it's very Gemini. People who think they know everything are a great annoyance to those of us who do. Isaac Asimov. So, anyways, thanks, Frank, so much for coming. And what a perfect thing to be talking about as we head into Gemini, because it's all about the hands. So, I really appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you in Chicago.
You will indeed. I'll see you both, hopefully.
Yep.
Yes.
And so, for everyone who's watching, thank you for showing up and supporting my podcast. I really appreciate it. And until next time, be true to yourself.